bar wasn't anything special. It was the kind of place where tired men sought solace at the bottom of a glass, its dim lighting hiding the cracks in the plaster walls and the regrets on its patrons' faces. I'd been sitting there for an hour, nursing a whiskey I wasn't even in the mood to drink, staring blankly at the muted TV mounted above the counter. My mind felt as empty as the conversations around me. Life had been a string of disappointments lately, the kind that sapped the energy out of your chest and left you hollow. It had been months since I'd begun to suspect something wasn't right with Rachel. We had been married for 6 years, and while every marriage has its challenges, this had been different. She had become distant, not the kind of distant you can brush off as a bad week at work or stress from some petty issue, but something deeper. Something that led to challenges and problems that we had pushed aside to deal with while waiting for the right attendance. She avoided my touch, spoke in half sentences, and guarded her phone like it was a national secret. I'd confronted her once, late at night, my voice tight with restrained anger. "Is there something you need to tell me, Rachel?" Her denial had been immediate, almost rehearsed, and yet her eyes betrayed her. She had always been a terrible liar, but that night she was just convincing enough to make me doubt myself. But the signs were there: missed dinners, hushed phone calls, and the faint smell of cologne on her clothes that wasn't mine. I'd convinced myself to wait to give her a chance to come clean. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I was paranoid, and maybe I was just a coward, afraid to pull the thread that might unravel everything. Tonight, though, was supposed to be different. I had come to the bar to clear my head, to think about what the hell I was going to do. Instead, fate decided to drop an answer in my lap like a cruel joke. When the door to the bar swung open, I didn't notice at first. It wasn't until the faint sound of her laugh carried across the room that my eyes lifted from the amber liquid in my glass. There she was, Rachel. My Rachel. But she wasn't alone. It's Ashley now. Ashley somewhere, somehow. It's a beautiful day. The sun is rising. The sky is pink again. Sun, Ashley, sun. The green sea blues from the horizon. For the first time in 50. The man with her was younger, broad-shouldered, and wearing an expensive leather jacket that screamed arrogance. They sat at a table not far from where I was, close enough for me to see the way she leaned into him. Her smile wide and carefree in a way I hadn't seen in years. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight it felt like I couldn't breathe. I didn't even have time to process the sight before the man stood up and walked toward me. My heart pounded as I stared at him, trying to will myself to disappear into the worn bar stool. "Hey," he said, his voice dripping with smugness as he clapped a hand on my shoulder. I flinched at the contact. The heat of his palm searing through the fabric of my shirt. "Ma'am, you lost your woman, soldier. She's mine now. Soldier." The word hit me like a slap. He had no idea how loaded that word was, how much of my identity it had been. And now here he was, using it like a casual insult, twisting the knife as he grinned down at me. Before I could respond, he turned and strolled toward the restroom, leaving me frozen in place. My hands clenched into fists, and the whiskey glass in front of me trembled. My mind was a blur of anger and humiliation, the sting of his words mixing with the sight of Rachel laughing at a table that should have been ours. I stood up without thinking. My chair scraped loudly against the floor as I approached their table. Rachel's smile faltered when she saw me, her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with something closer to annoyance, as though I were an inconvenience she hadn't accounted for. Does it give you pleasure to publicly humiliate me?" I asked, my voice low, but charged with barely controlled fury. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, her lover returned from the restroom. He saw me standing there and smirked like a man who had already won the battle before it began. "Hey, bastard," he said, stepping between us. "You're still here?" And that's when everything snapped. Over time, Rachel's career took off, and with it came late nights, business trips, and a growing distance between us. I encouraged her. I wanted her to succeed. I picked up the slack at home, taking on more of the parenting responsibilities while she chased her dreams. When Lily cried in the middle of the night, it was me who rocked her back to sleep. When she needed help with her school projects, I stayed up with her, cutting cardboard and gluing glitter, while Rachel sent apologies from some hotel conference room miles away. I didn't complain. I told myself it was temporary, that we were a team and this was just a phase. But Rachel stopped meeting me halfway. She grew colder, more critical, finding fault in things that never used to matter. My job, my hobbies, even the way I folded the laundry. I chalked it up to stress, to the pressures of her career, and kept trying to make things work. But Rachel was a different kind of scientist. As the science really improved her faith in me, I felt improved in my scientism. I chalked it up to stress, to the pressures of her career, and kept trying to make things work. And now, here I was, standing in a dingy bar, while the woman I had built a life with laughed with another man. That wasn't the worst of it, no. The worst was the gnawing realization that Rachel hadn't just been unfaithful, she had been cruel. She had gone out of her way to humiliate me. Bringing him here, to a place where she knew I might see them, wasn't an accident. It was a statement. The injustice of it burned in my chest. I had given everything for this family. I had swallowed my pride time and again, working long hours to make sure Rachel had the freedom to climb the ladder of success. I had sacrificed my dreams, my peace, even my identity, to be the glue that held us together. And for what? To be discarded like an old tool she no longer found useful? And for the reason to be surrendered. As promised, the tool she no longer found useful, as her lover stepped in front of me, his smug grin mocking me, the weight of it all came crashing down. The betrayal, the sacrifices, the years of trying to be enough. It boiled over, igniting a fire I couldn't control. Oh! Without thinking, my fist shot out. I grabbed his arm as he raised it in a weak attempt to block me and twisted hard. The sickening crack of bone breaking echoed through the bar, followed by his howl of pain. He stumbled back, clutching his arm, his confident smirk replaced with wide-eyed shock. "Jesus Christ, what the hell is wrong with you?" Rachel shrieked, jumping to her feet. I turned to her, my chest heaving with adrenaline. "What's wrong with me?" I hissed. "What's wrong with you, Rachel? Do you have any idea what you've done to me, to Lily, or does that even matter to you anymore?" Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She wasn't used to seeing me like this. Raw, unfiltered, a man pushed past his breaking point. The bar had gone silent. People were staring, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt something other than helplessness. I felt a righteous fury, the kind that demanded justice, even if it came at a cost. The man on the floor groaned, his broken arm cradled against his chest as he glared up at me. "You're insane," he spat through gritted teeth. I leaned down, my voice low and venomous. "Understood? You don't know the first thing about me, but you'll remember this." I straightened and turned back to Rachel. "So with you." For the first time in years, she didn't have anything to say. As Rachel stood there, frozen and silent in the wake of my outburst, I saw something flicker across her face. Not guilt, not regret, but defiance. It was subtle, a tightening of her jaw, a hardening in her eyes. It wasn't the look of a woman caught in the wrong. It was the look of a woman who thought she was justified, who believed she had won. That realization stung more than her betrayal. This wasn't just about an affair. This was something deeper, something darker. "Why, Rachel?" I demanded, my voice cutting through the thick silence of the bar. "Why would you do this, to me, to us, after everything we've been through, everything I've done for you? Why?" She crossed her arms, her gaze darting toward her lover, who was still on the floor, whimpering in pain. Her lips pressed into a thin line before she finally spoke, her voice cold and deliberate. "'Cause I was tired, Michael," she said. "Tired of being married to a man who's stuck in the past. Tired of living with someone who doesn't understand what it means to want more from life. You're predictable, stagnant, and I deserve better. Her words hit like a sledgehammer, each one carefully chosen to wound. Predictable, stagnant. I had been her rock, the one constant in the life she had built on my sacrifices, and now she was blaming me for it. You mean you wanted excitement, I said bitterly, someone shiny and new to distract you from your responsibilities. While I was at home raising our daughter, keeping this family together, you were out playing house with him. I gestured at the man still writhing on the floor. How long, Rachel? How long has this been going on? Her jaw tightened further, but she didn't flinch. A year, she said, her tone sharp and unapologetic. And for the record, Michael, you're not some martyr. You chose this life. You chose to settle for mediocrity. A year, 12 months of lies, of looking me in the eye every day and pretending nothing was wrong, of coming home to our daughter, to our life, while sneaking around behind my back. It's terrible. And that's why cat precautions are a requirement. I should have felt crushed, but instead, a dark clarity settled over me. If Rachel thought she could walk all over me, if she thought she could humiliate me and walk away unscathed, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. You're right, I said, my voice eerily calm. I did settle, but not for mediocrity, for you, and that's a mistake I'll never make again. Comenta. Her eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, I turned and strode toward the bar. I needed to think, not about salvaging the shambles of my marriage, but about how to take control of this situation. By the time I left the bar that night, I had a plan. It wasn't impulsive, and it wasn't violent, not directly anyway. It was methodical, deliberate, the kind of plan that would leave Rachel and her lover with no doubt that they had messed with the wrong man. Initially, the first step was simple. I went home, packed a bag, and left without a word. Rachel could explain my absence to Lily if she cared enough to. I had bigger things to worry about. Step 2 was even simpler. I called my lawyer. Divorce was inevitable, but this wouldn't just be a divorce. It would be a reckoning. Rachel didn't know it yet, but I had been smart over the years. The house, it was in my name. The joint accounts, I had separate savings she didn't know about. Her career, I had enough evidence of her affair to blow up any hope she had of coming out of this clean. Her veil, but that wasn't enough. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. I wanted her to lose the one thing she valued most, her perfect image. How long do you... It took weeks to set everything in motion. During that time, I stayed quiet, letting Rachel think she had won. I showed up for Lily, pretending nothing was wrong, all while laying the groundwork for the final blow. When the day finally came, it was almost too easy. Rachel had a big presentation at work, one she'd been preparing for months. It was her chance to impress the higher-ups and secure a promotion that would fast-track her to an executive role. She didn't see me when I walked into the conference room, dressed in a suit and carrying a manila folder. Her boss, a stern-looking man with grey hair, raised an eyebrow as I introduced myself. Michael Carter, I said, handing him the folder. Rachel's husband. I thought you might want to see this before her presentation. Rachel's face went pale as her boss opened the folder. Inside were photos, text message screenshots and receipts, all painting a clear picture of her affair. But it wasn't just evidence of infidelity. It was proof that she had used company resources to fund her secret life. Hotel stays billed to the corporate account, suspicious travel expenses, everything meticulously documented. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Her boss didn't even let her finish the meeting before firing her on the spot. She chased after him, trying to explain, but the damage was done. By the time I walked out of the building, Rachel's career was in ruins. That night, I sat in my car outside the house, watching as she packed her things into the back of her lover's car. She had no job, no reputation, and soon no custody of our daughter. I had made sure of that too. As the car pulled away, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Rachel had tried to break me, to strip me of my dignity and leave me with nothing. But in the end, it was she who had lost everything. Some might say I went too far, but for the first time in years, I felt whole. The satisfaction of seeing Rachel's carefully curated life crumble didn't fade as quickly as I thought it might. In the days that followed, I focused on what truly mattered. Lily. If Rachel wanted to rebuild her world with her lover, she could do it far away from me and our daughter. But Rachel wasn't the type to go quietly. A week after the incident at her office, I got a text from her, a long, rambling message laced with anger, blame, and the faintest hint of desperation. Rachel, you've made your point, Michael. You've destroyed my career, turned my boss and colleagues against me, and humiliated me in front of everyone who matters. Congratulations. But don't think this is over. I won't let you take Lily away from me. You might have the upper hand now, but we both know you're not as perfect as you pretend to be. I'll see you in court. Her words didn't scare me. They only solidified my resolve. Rachel had underestimated me once, and it had cost her. She wouldn't make that mistake again. But it didn't matter. I was always one step ahead. The court hearings were brutal. Rachel played the part of the wronged woman, painting me as controlling, emotionally distant, and unfit to raise our daughter. She cried on cue, her performance so convincing I could almost believe she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. Her lawyer leaned hard into the narrative, portraying me as a bitter ex bent on revenge. But Rachel didn't know I had one final ace up my sleeve. A move so calculated, it felt like checkmate in a game I hadn't even wanted to play. It happened during the custody battle. On the second day of testimony, Rachel's lawyer was hammering me with questions, trying to make me lose my cool in front of the judge. "Mr. Carter," the lawyer said, pacing dramatically in front of the courtroom, "you claim to be a devoted father, but isn't it true that your military background has left you emotionally unavailable and ill-equipped to provide the nurturing environment a young girl needs?" I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to remain calm. I said. "I've done everything for my daughter. I've been there for her every step of the way, even when Rachel wasn't." The lawyer smirked, sensing an opportunity. "And yet, despite your supposed devotion, your wife felt the need to seek companionship elsewhere. Doesn't that speak volumes about your inadequacy as a husband and a father?" It was a low blow, but I was ready for it. Instead of rising to the bait, I turned my attention to Rachel, who was sitting at the opposite table, her expression smug. "Your Honor," I said, addressing the judge, "I'd like to submit a piece of evidence into the record." My lawyer handed a small flash drive to the court clerk, who plugged it into a monitor. Moments later, the screen lit up with footage from Rachel's lover's social media account. Footage he had posted without thinking, in the throes of his own arrogance. The video showed Rachel and her lover in a hotel room, laughing and clinking glasses. In the background, the voice was unmistakably Rachel's. On the video, she laughed and said, "I can't believe I got away with charging this to the company. Michael would kill me if he knew." The courtroom fell silent. Rachel's face went white, her composure cracking for the first time. Her lawyer stammered, trying to object, but it was too late. The damage was done. I let the moment linger, then turned back to the judge. "This isn't just about infidelity, Your Honor," I said firmly. "This is about the kind of environment my daughter has been exposed to. Rachel didn't just betray me. She lied, manipulated, and made choices that put her own interests above our family's. I will not let that behavior affect Lily's future. I will not stand for Rachel's corruption." 2 weeks later, the ruling came down. Full custody was awarded to me. Rachel was granted supervised visitation pending a review of her conduct. Her lover, the man who had smugly celebrated their affair, was nowhere to be seen. It seemed he had finally realized that Rachel's chaos wasn't worth the cost. Months passed and life began to stabilize. I adjusted to single parenthood, pouring everything I had into creating a stable, happy world for Lily. She didn't fully understand what had happened, only that her mum wasn't around as much anymore. I did my best to shield her from the ugliness, keeping her world bright and steady. As for Rachel, she faded into the background of our lives. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers about her, how she struggled to find work, how her lover had left, how she'd moved back in with her parents. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me with her big, curious eyes. She said, "So what is the last gossip?" "Daddy," she asked, "why doesn't Mummy come to my soccer games anymore?" An end of question. I paused, the weight of her question pressing down on me. "Mummy's going through some things right now," I said gently. "But I'm here, and I always will be." "Mummy, She smiled, her trust in me unwavering. In that moment, I realized something. I had lost Rachel, but I hadn't lost myself. I was stronger than she'd ever given me credit for, and now I had a future worth fighting for. A future where Lily would never doubt how much she was loved. The next few years passed in a blur, a steady climb from the wreckage Rachel had left behind. Life didn't fix itself overnight, but piece by piece, I rebuilt it. Lily thrived in the stability I worked so hard to provide, her laughter filling the house in ways that made every sacrifice worthwhile. She grew into a bright, curious child, painting the world with her optimism. For her, I stayed grounded, determined to ensure she never felt the chaos that had once consumed our family. Rachel, though, wasn't done with her games. True to form, she tried to claw her way back into our lives, but not for the reasons you might expect. It wasn't love or remorse driving her, it was bitterness, the kind of grudge that festers in someone who can't admit they've lost. Her first attempt came as a custody appeal, claiming she'd changed and was ready to be a more active presence in Lily's life. It was all smoke and mirrors, of course. She had found a new man, an older, wealthier one, and wanted to parade the illusion of stability in front of the court. But her history spoke louder than her rehearsed testimony. Her appeal was denied. Her second attempt was more desperate. One rainy afternoon, she showed up at my house, unannounced and uninvited. I opened the door to find her standing there, soaked to the bone, a mess of mascara and tears. "Michael," she said, her voice trembling, "please, can we just talk?" I hesitated, not out of compassion, but sheer disbelief. This was the same woman who had done everything in her power to tear me down, now standing on my doorstep like a beggar seeking alms. "What do you want, Rachel?" I asked, my tone cold but calm. She wiped at her face, trying to compose herself. I need another chance. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm different now. I can be the mother Lily deserves." I stared at her, the rain pouring down behind her like a metaphor for the mess she'd made of her life. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. "She already has a parent who puts her first," I said firmly, "and it's not you." "It's not enough that someone saw it." Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. I closed the door on her plea, locking it, as if to keep out the ghost of everything she had been. The final chapter of Rachel's story came not long after. She fell further into her own spiral, alienating everyone who had once been in her corner. Her new relationship didn't last. Her finances crumbled. Her bitterness grew like a cancer. End of chapter 2. Rainbow transformation. Relief, purity, and connection. The messages she sent asking to see Lily became fewer and fewer until they stopped altogether. I didn't tell Lily about it, sparing her the pain of knowing her mother had chosen to fade from her life. I simply carried on, filling the void with as much love and stability as I could muster. As for me, I found peace. It wasn't the kind that comes from a grand epiphany or new romance. It was quiet, steady, the kind that grows in the absence of chaos. I found joy in the small things: Lily's soccer games, lazy Sundays building blanket forts, the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt on my terms. Years later, on the day Lily graduated from high school, I stood in the crowd, cheering louder than anyone else. She spotted me, her face lighting up as she waved. In that moment, the weight of everything that had happened fell away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of pride and gratitude. I had lost a wife, but I had gained something far more precious: the unshakable bond between a father and his daughter. Rachel had tried to destroy me, but instead, she had given me the clarity to see what truly mattered, and for that, in some twisted way, I was grateful. Lily hugged me tightly after the ceremony, her eyes glistening with happiness. "Thanks for everything, Dad," she said softly. "I couldn't have done it without you." I held her close, my heart full. "You're my everything, Lily, always." As we walked away together, I realized that my story wasn't one of loss, it was one of resilience. Rachel had underestimated me, but in doing so, she had revealed the depths of my own strength. Now, the life I had rebuilt was stronger than anything she could have torn apart. Let's hope you find your own way.